I suppose the first question to ask all three of you really is Bitcoin. Is this a bubble market? And even if it is a bubble market, will cryptocurrencies go away, or is the cat out of the bag for decentralized currencies and a genuine alternative to fiat currencies? David?
I wouldn't say I've got a first-class honours degree in the subject, I have to say, but I must say it is an alternative form of finance that requires deep understanding and having the brains up to find out what it's really all about. The things that concern me about it, and I may be slightly out of date, is I think only 8 million people globally are involved in it, that it isn't a physical instrument, and therefore it's very hard to be able to value it accurately. The other two things I don't like about it is it's not properly regulated. Now, I think we're starting to see the FCA and the US authorities and others and the European Union saying we need to regulate this, which they do. I am hopeful that the CBOE and yet day before yesterday the CMA, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, are now providing futures contracts which should give the product more liquidity. I am told, and have read, as I'm sure all of you have, that Robert Shiller, who's a very distinguished economist who's done a lot of work on this, saying he thinks it's going to be incredibly difficult for bearish stances on the market to be able to take place, that you're likely in the current cycle to get blown away by the bulls. We have seen this price of the Bitcoin going up from $234 in May of 2015, but ain't that long ago, up. There's a peak of just over $19,000, and when I last looked, I think it was yesterday, it was down to 16 and change, which by my thoughts is catastrophic movement.
15%.
I just believe that the unit of something that big is dangerous, and whether we can split the unit in some way, because to start, I mean, you all use social media, but I know 2 or 3 people who've made £2.5 million in the last 2 weeks, and they've got more guts and drive than I have. I wouldn't even start to get involved. I don't understand it. I know what it is. I can tell you what it's all about. But whether it's something that we should allow to get completely out of hand without having regulatory control, my thoughts are no.
Okay, thank you. Susan Kramer.
Well, this is an area where I need to go a long way up the learning curve. I mean, I've been watching these currencies for a while, but I can't pretend I have the knowledge base that I really should. All that shocks me is when I start talking with people in various different branches of government. I find that they don't seem to know much more than I do, and that to me is extremely worrying. I think it was sort of, put aside as a fad that would entertain some, people looked at blockchain sitting underneath Bitcoin because of the distributed ledger capabilities, but really didn't take Bitcoin that seriously. Now we've got Ethereum and a whole lot of other players in this business. But what worries me the most is that people who cannot afford to lose money will get tempted to play in incredibly volatile, high-risk, unpredictable market. And because I think Nicola has in the past talked about, the fact that in so many areas high returns are not really available. That the temptation grows stronger. We also we are not on top of abusive selling. Our capacity to manage and deal with a lot of that. We're going to be able to stop cold calling for financial services very shortly, which is going to be a big help. But I am really afraid of this being sold to the wrong people, who will be extremely vulnerable, and that there can be some very serious consequences of it. So I think government and regulators have got to begin to understand all of this better. The other thing I don't understand are what are the broader, longer-term consequences when a currency no longer has any home whatsoever, but in a sense is, sort of totally global in the way that it functions. And how do you deal with regulation? How do you deal with issues that impact on financial stability? How do you look at it in such a way that you can untangle the complexity of connections it underpins, so that you know where risk actually lies? I think there's an incredible amount to do around this, and I suspect people are starting to do it now, but behind the curve, just as I am myself.
I mean, proponents of it, those who still well, either it's very cleverly veiled greed, or their genuine idealists argue that, of course, this is disruptive of central government, and it's a universal store of value and all those things. So, providing they don't crack the algorithm which stores the secret of each individual coin, has a separate algorithm, to the best of my understanding, then there is this sort of peer-to-peer currency which is universal. So, for example, someone in an oppressive regime, I happen to have a friend who's Venezuelan and also a South African, and they both have invested and have friends who've invested in cryptocurrencies because it's a way of getting money out of the country.
But I mean, what concerns me is, it seems to me that a regime that wishes to do so may well be in a position to dominate a particular cryptocurrency and use it for their own particular purposes. I mean, I'm working right now on money laundering legislation, which isn't even anticipating the impact of all of this could be. And do not underestimate the financial skills of every major criminal element. Weapons trader,
that's actually
human trafficker.
That's one of the major
points.
This
is Nicola
really
speaking. Nicola.
Yes, that what we have here is the opportunity for criminals to do things and leave no fingerprints, and it is definitely the case that these various cryptocurrencies are being used by criminal gangs to do all sorts of things, and it's very difficult to do anti-money laundering checks when everything is anonymous. It's definitely the case. Yes, there is definite proof. And the other thing is the fundamentals. When we're analysing where sterling's going or where the dollar's going, we can look at the underlying economies and say, well, growth is going to do this, and that underpins a currency. You also have somebody controlling the money supply. You have a central bank. With this, the money supply is built into the algorithm, interestingly, certainly with Bitcoin. So, and it was published at the outset. This is what we're going to do in terms of when we're going to increase the supply, and it's going to be capped at a certain level. So that then creates more of a frisson, because you know that there's a limited amount of it. And so you've got this sort of built-in money supply thing that you can look at. So, but I do think it's a bubble. I mean, for something to go from being, $240 in 2015 to 19,000 and now down to 16,000 is ridiculous. It's the sort of thing where my children are telling me that they're putting their pocket money in, and their friends are too. And taxi drivers are asking me about it. So that is always a sign that something's
So that's the equivalent of Joseph P. Kennedy's shoeshine boy in 1929, which made him sell.
Your take on it's great, and I think you've got it spot on. The one thing that tells me that it is probably spivs and vagabonds is the unit. It's so big. So that precludes an awful lot of ordinary people even thinking of getting involved.
Well, you can buy bits.
You can buy. There was a piece in the Standard the other just a couple of days. This is mid-December.
You're going to be involved with people that you probably shouldn't be involved with.
Yes.
If you do that sort of thing. So
but
once the regulators get on top of this,
we've got to remember that foreign exchange is unregulated. It's the big unregulated market. So if foreign exchange isn't regulated, how do you justify regulating Bitcoin? A. B, no one really knows who actually controls it. The people who set it up, some Japanese name associated with it, but no one knows whether that's one person, several people who actually set it all up and why. And so it's a bit of a strange, shady thing, isn't it? But in terms of undermining the existing structure, I mean, tax is a big issue because, we as a financial services company have to report to HMRC what our lenders have earned in interest. And that means that people can't lie about how much interest they've earned on the Money&Co platform.
As they play no-
With this, no one has any idea whether someone bought a Bitcoin for $1,000 and sold it for $16,000. They're not going to declare it on their tax return, are they? So you've got money floating around and no means of taxing it. And then in addition to that, so I think this is another example of if you print lots of money, it's got to go somewhere. It's been fueled by quantitative easing. So if you print lots of money, some of it's going to end up in Bitcoin.
Well, let me just offer you, all three of you, this. I'm going to bring this short podcast pretty much to a close shortly thereafter. I'm going to go a quick round the table, yes or no later. But I'm hoping by the time this podcast is out, there'll be a short 20,000 word book that tells you all you need to know, that mines the truth from the fiction surrounding Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So I try to deal with what naively I believe in as such things as facts and simply observable ones. And the fact is that some of the most expensive and this is probably a misuse of the epithet illustrious PR companies in this country are being hired by cryptocurrencies to lobby government. Now, how can something that's decentralized get it together to hire a big PR firm? The answer is that this marvellous democratic, or the implication surely may be that this marvellous democratic system isn't quite so marvellous and democratic, and that a lot of people have got the founders have stored a huge amount of wealth at today's rates in these tokens, which they're seeking to diversify their asset base and sustain the wealth and make it as mainstream as possible, I'd suggest. But anyway, the research is ongoing at the time of the recording of this podcast. Now, just to round off, I think we're all agreed that because of the extreme volatility of the market and the extraordinary price rises and 15% down in a day, well, that's not so bad. Of course, it's catastrophic, but in this context, it's par for the course. So definitely, we all think it's a bubble market. I mean, not that I'm here to garner your opinions, but I'll throw mine into the pot as well. But where will Bitcoin be in a year's time? It's 16,000 or so at the time of recording this. Will it still be around? Will someone have cracked the algorithm and it'll all be bust? Or if it is still around, where will it be, David? Do you think?
I've got a funny feeling.
What will the weather be like this time next year?
Basically over a period of time, it's a bubble. But I think the time.
You think it will go away? You don't think the genie's out of the bottle for fiat currency?
It's in basically so few hands. And taking Nicola's point, which is the most valid one or not, how do you justify regulating it when you don't regulate foreign exchange? Means that the control of this cryptocurrency will remain, how can I put it to you, in slightly doubtful hands that you don't know about, and in which case I think there's a lot of scope for it to go down.
Delicately put. Baroness Kramer.
Well, I fear that I think in the immediate future we're looking at a bubble, but I just don't think cryptocurrencies are going to disappear. They are far too useful to the black economy, and the black economy is huge. And we've been very weak at shutting down the black economy. And it seems to me this is almost one of the portals whereby the black economy can move into the white, which is it now. So there's an awful lot of very powerful organisations for whom that this is invaluable. And I don't think they're going to give this up. And what we have to do is make sure that at government and regulatory level we begin to get a grip on it. But it worries me because of that long-term implication for the black economy.
Thank you. Nicola.
I agree, it's part of the black economy, and that extends, as was mentioned earlier, to people in difficult areas, like Venezuela or South Africa or China or wherever, trying to get money out of those countries. So I think because you've got criminals, you've got people trying to move money out of places where it's difficult to move money, and you've just got general euphoria about the whole market. It may well be that in a year's time the Bitcoin's worth $50,000. It is a bubble. I would be very, very circumspect about putting money into it. I mean, frankly, I don't even like investing in gold because I've never really understood the fundamentals of gold, so I certainly wouldn't be investing in a Bitcoin. But in terms of where it's going to be in a year's time, it could well be at $50,000.
Well, only time will tell. We'll draw a line under that for now. I think the next podcast coming up, for all we know, fur could be flying, but as an enjoyable a degree of consensus, all infused with scepticism there. And I'd just like to thank all of you, David Buick, Baroness Kramer and Nicola Horlick. Thank you.